Florida. Sun-drenched beaches, palm trees swaying in the breeze, a paradise for tourists and retirees alike. But beneath the postcard-perfect image, Florida has also been home to some of the darkest, most disturbing crimes in American history. For the next month, AI True Crime is heading deep into the Sunshine State, uncovering the most infamous and bizarre crimes ever committed within its borders. And there's no better, or worse, place to begin than with one of the most notorious killers of all time, Ted Bundy. The name alone conjures fear. Bundy was more than just a serial killer. He was a chameleon, a manipulator, a predator who hid behind charm and intelligence. He was a man who could smile to your face, make you feel at ease, and within moments, turn into a ruthless murderer. And Florida was where his luck finally ran out. In the early morning hours of January 15, 1978, Bundy crept into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University and unleashed a nightmare of violence. In the span of just 15 minutes, he bludgeoned and strangled 4 women, killing 2 of them, before slipping back into the night. Hours later, he would strike again. At the time, no one knew who had committed the horror that unfolded in that house. But soon, the pieces would fall into place, and Ted Bundy would become a name forever linked to terror. Tonight, we unravel the final, brutal chapter of Bundy's killing spree. How he escaped justice, fled to Florida, and left a blood-stained path before meeting his own end. This is the story of Ted Bundy, the predator behind the charm, the lies, and the mask of normalcy. This is AI True Crime. The making of a monster. By the time Ted Bundy arrived in Florida, he was no amateur killer. His crimes had spanned years, multiple states, and an unknown number of victims. Born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, Bundy's early years were shaped by secrets and deception. Raised in the home of his grandparents, he was told that his mother, Louise Bundy, was actually his sister, and that his grandparents were his real parents. The revelation of his true parentage, when it came, only added to the fractured sense of self he carried throughout his life. Bundy grew up in Tacoma, Washington, where he was a bright, well-spoken, and seemingly normal child. But beneath the surface, something darker was brewing. He developed a fascination with violence, crime, and control at an early age. As a teenager, he began peering into windows, spying on women, and stealing things, not for profit but for power. After high school, Bundy attended several universities, studying psychology and law, but never fully committing to any one path. What he did master, however, was manipulation. During the early 1970s, young women began disappearing across the Pacific Northwest. The pattern was chilling. All were attractive, college-aged, and had vanished without a trace. The only clues came from witnesses who described a charming man who introduced himself as Ted. He often wore a fake arm sling or crutches, pretending to need help. In reality, it was a trap. Bundy would lure women to his Volkswagen Beetle, strike them over the head with a blunt object, and drive them to their deaths. His killing spree extended across Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado, leaving a trail of bodies behind. But in August 1975, his luck ran out. Bundy was pulled over in Utah, and inside his car, police found handcuffs, a crowbar, and a ski mask, a murder kit. Investigators quickly linked him to multiple disappearances. By 1976, he had been convicted of kidnapping in Utah and was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for murder. And that's when Bundy did something that terrified authorities. He escaped. In December 1977, Bundy crawled through a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell, slipped through the building undetected, and walked right out the front door. By the time guards realized he was gone, Bundy was already hundreds of miles away. With no money, no identification, and nothing to lose, Bundy fled across the country. His destination? Florida. Underscore 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 underscore. The nightmare at Chi Omega. Ted Bundy arrived in Tallahassee in early January 1978. He had no money, no car, and no clear plan, only the growing, unbearable urge to kill. For weeks, he lived in a cheap rooming house, stole food, and shoplifted to survive. He even tried to create a normal life, going by the name Chris Hagen, frequenting bars and visiting the FSU campus. But the predator inside him would not be contained. On the night of January 14, 1978, Bundy snapped. At approximately 3 a.m., Bundy approached the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. The house was home to multiple young women, most of whom were asleep, unaware that a killer was about to enter. Bundy didn't have to force his way in. The front door was unlocked. He crept through the darkened house, a piece of oak firewood gripped tightly in his hands. Then the slaughter began. Margaret Bowman, 21, was the first to die. She was bludgeoned with the firewood while she slept, and then strangled with a pair of nylon stockings. Next, Bundy moved to Lisa Levy, 20. He struck her violently, bit her with such force that his teeth left deep impressions in her flesh, and sexually assaulted her before leaving her dead. But Bundy wasn't finished. He entered another room, where Kathy Kleiner, 21, and Karen Chandler, 22, were asleep. Before they could react, Bundy smashed their skulls with the firewood, shattering their jaws and leaving them barely clinging to life. Then, something interrupted him. A sorority sister, Nita Neary, returned home at that exact moment and saw a shadowy figure leaving the house. Bundy slipped out the door and disappeared into the night. The entire brutal attack lasted less than 15 minutes. By dawn, police were swarming the Chi Omega house. Blood stained the walls. The survivors lay in agony, and the bodies of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy were lifeless in their beds. And Bundy? He wasn't done yet. The attack on Cheryl Thomas. Ted Bundy was not finished. Less than an hour after leaving the bloodied Chi Omega sorority house, he broke into another apartment just a few blocks away. His target was Cheryl Thomas, a 21-year-old Florida State University dance major. Bundy climbed in through the window and attacked her as she slept. He beat her viciously, fracturing her skull, dislocating her shoulder, and leaving her with permanent hearing loss. However, something caused him to leave before he could finish the attack. Some believe he was spooked by noise from Cheryl's neighbors. Those neighbors, disturbed by the violent sounds coming from Cheryl's apartment, called the police. When officers arrived, they found Cheryl barely conscious, suffering from massive head injuries. Bundy was gone, but he had left behind crucial evidence: a pantyhose mask with fibers that later linked him to the crime. At this point, police knew they had a violent serial predator loose in Tallahassee. They just didn't know who he was yet. Underscore 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 underscore. The manhunt begins. News of the Chi Omega murders and the attack on Cheryl Thomas spread like wildfire. The community was terrified. Women locked their doors. Parents called their daughters, begging them to be careful. Police urged students to remain vigilant. Investigators worked around the clock, but there were few leads. The best description they had came from Nita Neary, the sorority sister who had seen Bundy fleeing the Chi Omega house. But it wasn't enough to make an arrest. Meanwhile, Bundy was still on the move. He fled Tallahassee, stealing cars, shoplifting, and staying ahead of authorities. But his impulse to kill was stronger than his instinct to hide. Underscore 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 underscore. The abduction of Kimberly Leach. On February 9, 1978, Bundy struck again, this time targeting 12-year-old Kimberly Leach in Lake City, Florida. Kimberly was last seen near her junior high school. Witnesses later recalled seeing a suspicious man in a stolen white van in the area. Bundy abducted her in broad daylight, just blocks away from her school. Her body wasn't discovered for months. When it was found in a wooded area, investigators determined she had been sexually assaulted and brutally murdered. This was Bundy's final known victim. And it was this crime that sealed his fate. Underscore 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 underscore. Bundy's arrest. The chase ends in Florida. Just 6 days after Kimberly Leach vanished, Bundy's luck ran out. On February 15, 1978, Bundy was driving a stolen Volkswagen Beetle in Pensacola, Florida, when Officer David Lee pulled him over. Bundy fought viciously, attempting to flee, but the officer was able to subdue and arrest him. At first, Bundy refused to reveal his identity. But fingerprints soon confirmed what authorities had feared. They had just captured one of the most wanted men in America. At the time of his arrest, Bundy had stolen credit cards, a set of fake IDs, and evidence linking him to his Florida crimes. The manhunt was over. Now it was time for justice. The trial. America watches a monster. Bundy's trial for the Chi Omega murders was unlike anything America had ever seen. This was 1979, and it was the first nationally televised murder trial in history. Millions watched as Bundy flaunted his arrogance, argued with judges, and cross-examined witnesses, acting as his own attorney. Despite his theatrics, the evidence was overwhelming. Eyewitness testimony. Nita Neary had seen Bundy fleeing the Chi Omega house. Forensic evidence. Hair and fibers found at the crime scenes matched Bundy. Bite mark analysis. Bundy had bitten Lisa Levy's body so forcefully that his dental impressions matched the wounds exactly. On July 24, 1979, after just 7 hours of deliberation, the jury found Bundy guilty of the murders of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. He was sentenced to death in the electric chair. But Bundy wasn't done yet. Underscore 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 underscore. The second trial, Kimberly Leach. Bundy still had to face trial for the murder of Kimberly Leach. Unlike his previous crimes, this case was even more heartbreaking. Kimberly was just a child. The evidence was damning. Witnesses had seen Bundy at her school the day she disappeared. Her body was found in a location Bundy was known to frequent. Fibers from Bundy's van matched Kimberly's clothing. Knowing he had no chance of acquittal, Bundy did something bizarre. During court proceedings, he married his longtime admirer Carol and Boone in open court, using a Florida legal loophole that recognized a marriage declaration in front of a judge. It was Bundy's last stunt, and it changed nothing. On February 10, 1980, he was convicted again and sentenced to death for a second time. This time, there would be no escape. Underscore 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 underscore. Death row. The final days of Ted Bundy. For nearly a decade, Bundy sat on Florida's death row, filing appeal after appeal. He granted interviews, trying to maintain his notoriety. As the execution date neared, Bundy began confessing. He admitted to over 30 murders, though investigators believe the real number was much higher, possibly over 100 victims. In a final, desperate plea, Bundy tried to blame pornography for his crimes in an interview with evangelical minister James Dobson. No one believed him. The public wanted justice, and justice was coming. The execution. The monster is gone. On the morning of January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was led to the electric chair at Florida State Prison. At 7:16 a.m., the switch was flipped. A surge of 2,000 volts coursed through Bundy's body. Minutes later, he was pronounced dead. Outside the prison, hundreds of people cheered. Some set off fireworks. Others held signs reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn." For the families of his victims, the nightmare was finally over. Ted Bundy was gone. Underscore 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 underscore. Conclusion: the shadow Bundy left behind. Ted Bundy was executed over 3 decades ago, but his name still haunts true crime history. Florida was where his reign of terror ended, but the state has no shortage of bizarre and chilling crimes. On the next episode of AI True Crimes Florida Month, we're shifting gears to something just as strange: the Great Koi theft orchestrated by Premnath Hardeo. Until then, the intelligence is artificial, but the crime is real.